name is Meg Edwards, and I'm a GTD coach, and we're doing a series on GTD for beginners. And this is part 4 of the weekly review series. I thought that it would be a good idea to be able to break down the weekly review, which is discussed in chapter 8 of the Getting Things Done book, which is the 4th phase of the 5 phases of control: capture, clarify, and organize, reflect, and engage. So in some ways, this is the reflecting time. Even though it's called the weekly review, it's really a wonderful opportunity to kind of unhook from the world and to be able to spend some time reflecting. And there are 3 parts to the weekly review: the get clear, get current, and get creative. And what I decided to do was to start with the get current part. And there's really 2 levels of the get current part: the ground level and the project level. And the first 3 videos addressed the ground level: your calendar, your actions lists, your checklists. And so now what we're going to do is we're going to bump up to the next horizon, which is the projects. And I think what happens is by the time people get to the project section of the weekly review, most people are kind of toast. Because they were trying to get clear, they were trying to clean up their actions list, and they get to the project list, and a lot of times they're just tired as the beginner, doing GTD. So let's just talk about the project list. Do you even have a project list? If you don't have a project list, well, let's talk about the definition of a project. I look at a definition of a project of anything that you want to complete in a couple of weeks to a couple of months to a year that's not self-evident. Technically the definition of anything that's more than an action is a project, but I think that it's important to add that if it's self-evident, you don't necessarily have to add it as a project. You want to be thinking about that you want to look at that project every week in the weekly review. That's kind of a couple of guidelines that you might want to think about with making a project list, because I've seen people kind of go a little too literal on it, and then a project list kind of repels them. At the same time, you can take something that is literally a couple of steps and make it a project, because that gets it off of your mind and you feel more in control. Great, go for it. So just use your discretion on what you decide that you want to have be a project. Now, the purpose of this step is just to get your project list current. Do you need to add a project? Do you need to take a project off because you completed it? Maybe you don't want to do that project anymore, or maybe it's not relevant anymore, or maybe your priorities have shifted work or personally, and that project needs to be put on a someday maybe list. Or if you haven't created it, you might want to create a project on hold list, which is, wow, we were going to do this, but something changed in the world and environment, and so we're going to put it on hold. We're still going to do it, but not now. What's the difference between projects on hold and someday maybe? It's really nuanced. Some people don't like to put a project on hold on the someday maybe list. They like to keep the someday maybe list of things I may or may not do. But a project on hold is, we are going to do it, but just not now. So then you can have a list of your current projects, projects on hold, and your someday maybe, which we'll address in another video, the someday maybe section. So now that you've cleaned up your calendar and your actions list, you're going to have a pretty good idea if that project has a next action or not. You're going to say, oh yeah, that project has a next action. I remember seeing it on my, calls list. Again, some tools will link actions and projects and some won't. So if you have a tool that doesn't link them, you're going to have to really think, does this project have a next action? If you have a tool where it does link your actions and projects, do you have a next action for it? Or you'll maybe see that next action linked to that project, and you have to ask yourself, am I still committed to do that next action as soon as I can? Is that still the next action? Maybe the next action changed. So by the end of your project review, you have a next action for each project. It's current, meaning these are all of the projects that you're working on. Another thing that you might want to think about, which sometimes happens when you're doing the weekly review, is just something's just sitting there and you just haven't gotten to it and you really, really want to get to it. It's just not happening. This sometimes is the opportunity to put that next action on the calendar. But it only works if you're not going to blow it off. If something has gotten away from you, or just you need blocks of time to work on that project, your calendar is the next actions list. And so maybe that's an opportunity to say, in order to get this project done now, I need to calendar it. So that's something that also shows up in a weekly review. I certainly have experienced that where I just haven't gotten to something and I calendar it and I get it done. So one of the things that I also see is it's okay to do a project review just on its own. I have so many clients that just block out time to do a project review. Again, these steps in the weekly review are not numbered. Nobody really said you had to do it in one sitting. You can chip away at it and just do a project review. For those of you who delegate projects to people, this is also an opportunity to have a project delegated list, which is a waiting for list on the project level. So let's say that you delegate a project out to John. Then you can start the project with John dash what the verb is. He needs to complete this or he needs to resolve this. Or you can start with a key word, but just make sure that you know who you've delegated it to. So you want to put the person's name in it, what you've delegated it. And then that's an opportunity in the project review to also review your project's delegated list. And what that does is that sometimes triggers a next action that you might want to take to check in with that person to see how they're doing. Now, maybe this is already handled when you're meeting with people on a regular basis. And when you're meeting with them, you may look at your project's delegated list to get an update. So some people are going to have a project's delegated list. Some people don't. It's okay. Some people put all their projects delegated on their waiting for list and they combine their one-off waiting fors and their projects delegated on one list. Again, depending on your cognitive preferences and the way that you think, some people like to separate them out. Some people like to combine them. Really up to you. So this is your project review. And again, you're reflecting. And so this is about slowing down and really getting your project list current. So if you want to add your project list into your weekly review or pull it out, go for it. And so this will conclude the section on the Get Current. And the next video series is going to be on the Get Clear part of the weekly review. For more GTD resources, please visit gettingthingsdone.com and David Allen's YouTube channel. For more information on GTD coaching, please email us at info@gtdfocus.com or visit our website at gtdfocus.com.